What if I told you there are engines so brutally powerful, so ahead of their time, that racing officials didn't just restrict them, they banned them outright? These weren't prototypes. These were real engines, built by American engineers with one mission: dominate everything. And they did, until politics, fear, and insurance companies shut them down. One of them made 657 horsepower back when most cars struggled to crack 200. Another got a man kicked off the track before he even crossed the starting line. I've spent years studying these machines, some hidden in barns, others lost to time. What you're about to see is more than a list. It's a countdown of 7 American engines, so rare, so controversial, that finding one today is like uncovering buried treasure. And trust me, number 3 will stop you in your tracks. Let's dive in. Engine 7, Oldsmobile 455 Rocket. The gentleman's torque monster that insurance companies tried to kill. At number 7, we start with an engine that didn't scream for attention. It crushed the competition in silence. The Oldsmobile 455 Rocket wasn't built for bragging rights. It was built to move mountains. While other brands were chasing high RPM horsepower numbers to get headlines, Oldsmobile engineers were focused on something far more dangerous: low-end torque, the kind that shoves you back in your seat without warning. This monster delivered over 500 pound-foot of torque at just 3,200 RPM, more than most trucks today. Imagine you're at a red light in 1970. A guy in a Dodge Challenger revs next to you. The light turns green, and you barely tap the gas. The Olds just glides forward, clean, quiet, and utterly humiliating. From 68 to 76, the Rocket powered the legendary 442. But here's where the story gets brutal. By 1971, insurance companies declared war on muscle cars. That 455 badge? It was a red flag. Premiums skyrocketed. One guy I interviewed told me his liability insurance alone was $3,000, more than the car itself. He had to sell it at 23, and he still regrets it. The Rocket also had an image problem. People thought Oldsmobile was for old men. Comfortable, yes. But a performance car? No one believed it. That meant these monsters flew under the radar, quiet killers at the stoplight, never taken seriously. Most were pulled apart or rebuilt without care, before anyone realized what they had. Today, if you find a numbers-matching 455 Rocket, especially the W30 Ram Air version, you're looking at a gold mine. The 455 Rocket proved one thing loud and clear: you don't need to scream to dominate, you just need torque. And this thing hit like a wrecking ball in a tuxedo.
Engine number 6, Pontiac 455, Hausen. The final stand before the muscle car era died. Coming in at number 6 is an engine that didn't just resist change. It stood in front of it and said, "Not today." This is the Pontiac 455 High Output, the last great act of rebellion before the muscle car age collapsed under its own weight. It was 1971. Emissions laws were looming. Insurance companies were gutting performance cars. Politicians were cracking down. Every major car brand was backing off, except Pontiac. While others were detuning engines and crying into their coffee, Pontiac's engineers went to war. They took the 455 and made it stronger. 4-bolt mains, big valve heads, an 800 CFM Rochester Quadrajet. The result? 335 horsepower, 480 pound-feet of torque. It ran the quarter mile in under 14 seconds on bias ply tires and a 3-speed automatic. I once spoke to a retired Pontiac engineer at a show. He told me, "We knew the end was coming. But we weren't going out quietly. The 455 HO was their last shot, a middle finger to the regulators, the insurers, and the growing fear that performance had no place in the future. But like all great underdog stories, this one has a heartbreak. By 1975, Pontiac had to give in. The final version of the 455 HO, just 200 horsepower. It was like watching a heavyweight champ get taken out by a man in a suit holding a pollution test. And here's the twist. Pontiac put the HO in everything. Trans Ams, GTOs, even Grand Prix and wagons. What should have made it legendary, diluted it. Because when your mom's grocery getter has the same engine as your weekend street racer, it's not special anymore. But today, if you find a real HO, especially inside a numbers-matching Trans Am or GTO, you're looking at serious collector status. The 455 HO wasn't just an engine, it was a declaration. If this is the end, then we're going out swinging.
Engine number 5, Buick Nailhead 401. The misunderstood genius that everyone ignored. Number 5 isn't just an engine, it's a misfit. A misunderstood masterpiece that never got the respect it deserved. This is the Buick Nailhead 401, and it was decades ahead of its time. You look at this motor and nothing about it says performance. The valves stand straight up, like nails in a wooden board. That's where the name Nailhead comes from. But while every other car maker was copying each other, Buick went rogue. They weren't chasing high revs. They weren't building for car magazine covers. They built an engine that delivered maximum torque at low RPMs, just like a diesel truck. In 1965, it made 360 horsepower and 425 pound-feet of torque in the Grand Sport. But here's the magic. That torque came in at just 2,800 RPM. Most engines don't even start breathing until 4,000. This one hit you like a sledgehammer from a dead stop. The problem? Nobody knew how to use it. Hot rodders tried to treat it like a small block Chevy. High cams, big revs, wild timing. And then they wondered why it ran like trash. I've got a buddy who's been building nailheads for 30 years. He told me, treat it like a tow rig, not a race car. Gear it right, keep it low, let the torque do the work. But back in the 60s, Buick had a problem. Reputation. It was the brand your dad drove. Safe, conservative, quiet. So when a teenager wanted to impress his girlfriend, he went to Chevy or Ford, not Buick. The Nailhead got ignored. It was a lion in librarian's clothes. And by the time hot rodders did figure it out, most of the good engines were already scrapped. Today, finding a clean 401 Nailhead is like finding a diamond buried in a junkyard. It taught us something important. Sometimes being different isn't the problem. Sometimes the problem is the world wasn't ready for you yet. Engine 4, Cadillac 500, the luxury monster that walked away from Corvettes. At number 4 is a motor you're probably not expecting. Not from a muscle car, not from a drag strip legend, from Cadillac. That's right, the Cadillac 500 cubic inch V8. One of the most powerful production engines of its time, hiding under the hood of luxury coupes and limousines. In 1970, it made 400 horsepower and 550 pounds-foot of torque, and it delivered all of it at just 3,000 RPM. That's more torque than a Hellcat with half the drama. Picture it, you're wearing a three-piece suit, sitting in an Eldorado, parked next to a Corvette LS5. The light turns green. You ease onto the pedal, and the caddy walks away from the vet like it's tied to a tree. And the best part? Nobody saw it coming. Cadillac buyers weren't into street races. They weren't reading quarter-mile times. So the engineers were free to build a sleeper supercar without triggering the insurance companies or emissions watchdogs. But freedom doesn't last forever. By 1971, the EPA came down hard. By 1976, the once mighty 500 was choked down to 190 horsepower. That's not a decline, that's a death sentence. I once spoke to a retired GM engineer who worked on it. He said, "We built a monster, then watched the government strangle it to death." And the tragedy? Cadillac put the 500 in everything. Eldorados, Fleetwoods, even hearses. When your funeral car has the same engine as your luxury coupe, it loses its mystique. Most owners didn't care. They drove them 200,000 miles, never checked the oil, and junked them when they knocked. That's why a clean, high-compression 7071 Cadillac 500 is nearly impossible to find today. But if you do, you're not just buying a car, you're buying a myth. A velvet-wrapped hammer that once humbled Corvettes and disappeared before anyone realized what it was.
Engine 3, Chrysler 426 Hemi, the elephant that made NASCAR rewrite the rules. Number 3 isn't just an engine, it's a turning point in racing history. This is the 426 Hemi, nicknamed the Elephant for its size and for how heavy it hit. February 1964, Daytona 500. Chrysler shows up with a brand new engine that no one's seen before. Practice runs begin, and every other team watches in shock as Hemi cars start running laps that don't make sense. Race day comes. Richard Petty doesn't just win. Chrysler goes 1-2-3, leaving Ford and GM gasping for air. This wasn't racing, it was a massacre. The 426 Hemi made 425 horsepower, nearly 500 pound-feet of torque, and used hemispherical combustion chambers that flowed air like nothing else on the track. It was built for domination, not compromise, and it worked too well. NASCAR panicked. Within a year, they banned the engine, claiming it was too specialized. But let's be honest, everyone knew what that really meant. The Hemi was too good. So Chrysler, in a move that was both brilliant and spiteful, said, "Fine, we'll sell it to the public." Enter the street Hemi. It came with slightly detuned specs, still 425 horsepower, but more street legal. Bone stock, it could run 13.5s in the quarter mile, and with a few tweaks, dip into the 12s. But it came with a catch. It was expensive. The Hemi option added $800 to $1,000 back in the 60s. That was crazy money. Most buyers settled for cheaper 446 packs. As a result, only around 11,000 street Hemis were ever made, across all years and models. Today, a real Hemi car is a six-figure legend. But the legacy is even bigger than the price tag. The 426 Hemi didn't just force NASCAR to change the rulebook, it rewrote what American performance could be. Not just brute strength, but sophistication. A machine so advanced, it scared the entire industry into silence. Engine number 2, Chevrolet ZL1 427. The $4,000 engine that almost no one dared to buy. Number 2 wasn't banned, it wasn't choked by regulations. It was silenced by something far simpler, its own price tag. This is the Chevrolet ZL1 427, a full aluminum, race-born monster that made 500 horsepower straight from the factory in 1969. But most people never even saw it. Walk into a Chevy dealer that year, eyeing a Camaro SS396, $2,700 base price. Not bad. Then a salesman, probably smoking a cigarette in a polyester suit, leans over the counter and says, "We've got something different." An all-aluminum 427, no cast iron, no corners cut, designed for Can-Am racing, lighter, faster, louder, and it'll cost you $4,160 extra. That's more than the car itself. Most people laughed. A few choked. Almost no one bought it. In the end, only 69 ZL1 Camaros were ever made.
And every one of them came with no warranty. You break it, you own it. Chevy wasn't bailing you out. It also came with solid lifters, which meant constant maintenance. If you didn't know what you were doing, the engine punished you. But those who did, they had a weapon. Bone stock, this car could run 11.60 in the quarter mile with street tires, a full interior, and factory exhaust. That's still fast today. And back then, it was like owning a spaceship. One contractor who bought one new told me, "I could have bought a house, but I wanted the fastest Camaro ever made." Today, the ZL1 isn't just rare, it's automotive royalty. A real deal documented ZL1 Camaro, you're looking at $500,000 minimum. The ZL1 proved something dangerous. If you let the engineers off the leash, you'll get something so good it scares the accountants.
Engine number 1, Ford 427 Camry.
The engine so advanced, NASCAR never let it race. And now we reach the top, the forbidden fruit of American performance. The engine that scared NASCAR before it ever touched the track. This is the Ford 427 SOHC Camry, an engineering masterpiece so powerful, so ahead of its time, that it never got to prove itself. Not where it was meant to. February 1964, Richard Petty and the Chrysler team show up to Daytona with the brand new 426 Hemi. Ford watches helplessly as their best drivers get lapped. Furious, Henry Ford II gives his engineers a deadline. 90 days to build something that can take down the Hemi, or else. What they delivered was a monster in a lab coat. They took Ford's proven 427 side oiler block and added single overhead cams, hemispherical combustion chambers, and a timing chain so long it looked like it belonged in a factory, not a car. Engineers called it the chain that ate Detroit, but it worked. The 427 Camry made 616 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and 657 horsepower with dual carbs in 1964. It revved to 8,000 RPM like it was bored. It was everything Chrysler feared, and everything NASCAR didn't want to deal with. Bill France, the founder of NASCAR, took one look and said, "No, too European, too advanced." Translation? If Ford races this, everyone else quits. NASCAR banned it before it ever raced. So Ford, furious but defiant, said, "Fine, we'll sell it to the public." They made 500 of them, sold through dealerships, no warranty, no safety net, just a warning for off-road use only. These engines found new life in drag racing, funny cars, rails, and street builds so wild they felt alien. Picture yourself in 1965, rumbling down Woodward Avenue with 650 horsepower under your right foot. You weren't just fast, you were a supernova in a sea of sparks. Today, finding a real Camry is like finding Excalibur. Most are locked away in private collections. A running engine alone, over $100,000. But what makes the Camry truly legendary is not just what it was, it's what it could have been. If NASCAR hadn't banned it, if politics hadn't blocked it, if jealousy hadn't killed it, we could have had 700 horsepower street cars in 1970. Instead, we got silence. The 427 Camry is a reminder of a lost era when engineers led the charge and performance came first.
There you have it. 7 engines, not just powerful, but dangerous to the status quo. Some were banned, some were priced out of reach, others were killed off by politics, pollution laws, or plain old fear. But every single one of them represents the peak of American engineering courage, a time when car companies weren't afraid to build something that might scare people. Think about it. In 1964, Ford was building engines with 657 horsepower. And by the mid-70s, we were driving emission-choked sedans with 150 horsepower and vinyl roofs. It's like watching civilization in reverse. But the beautiful part, these engines didn't disappear. They survived in barns, in garages, in the hands of people who knew what they had. And today, they're more than machines. They're legends. So tell me, which one shocked you the most? The Cadillac that walked away from Corvettes, the ZL1 that cost more than a house, or the Camry, the forbidden king of NASCAR? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you love stories like this, about lost legends, outlaw machines, and buried horsepower, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because next week, I'm diving into the rarest Shelby Cobra ever built, and the wild reason Carroll Shelby tried to have it destroyed. Until then, keep the throttle wide open, keep the stories alive, and remember, they don't build them like this anymore, and they probably never will again.